12th meeting of the Administrative Regulation and Review Subcommittee together. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Senator Rocky Adams. Senator Thayer.
Here.
Senator Yates. Representative Bridges. Representative Frazier Gordon.
Yes.
Representative Grossberg.
Present.
Senator West.
Here.
Representative Lewis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
With the quorum present, the subcommittee is duly constituted to do business. I do need a motion for approval of the minutes.
Motion.
Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Madam Secretary, please call the first regulation.
Finance and Administration Cabinet, Kentucky Public Pensions Authority, 105 KAR 1-215 with staff suggested amendment.
105 KR 1215 amends to update definitions, add agency portal procedures, including portal access and notification requirements, establish fees for a supplemental copy of all or part of an administrative record consistent with statute, and incorporate by reference the agency portal exemption form. The amended after comments version amends Section 1 to add a definition for informal settlement, amends Section 2 to change a reference from pretrial to pre-hearing conference, amends Section 3 to add the people who submit an agency portal exemption shall receive copies via first-class mail unless KRS Chapter 13B requires a different distribution, amends to add informal settlement procedures, and amends to clarify how the recommended order will be provided to the parties. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record, please?
Carrie Bass, Staff Attorney Supervisor for the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority.
Jessica Bobian, Policy Specialist for the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority.
Thank you all for being here today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval on the staff amendment? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing no questions, thank you all for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Boards and Commissions, State Board of Accountancy, 201 KAR 1-190 with staff suggested amendment.
201 KR 1-190 amends to extend the time limit to pass all sections of the Uniform CPA exam from 18 to 30 months for consistency with the model rule change adopted by the National Association of the State Boards of Accountancy, and remove the current limit on college internship hours eligible to satisfy educational requirements to sit for the exam. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Thank you for coming today. Please introduce yourself for the record. Is your mic on?
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
It's not my first time either, Chairman. I'm Joe Donahue, Executive Director of the State Board of Accountancy.
Welcome back. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Any questions from members of the subcommittee? I'll just make a brief comment. In a former life, I was in public accounting, and I see you're moving from 18 to 30 months to complete and take all the exams. Are you seeing that in several states nationwide?
We are, yes, Chairman.
And
Yep.
what are you seeing in terms of the job market right now? Is there a lot of people still going into accounting or any shortages?
There are more jobs than people to fill them, believe it or not, for CPAs. We are having a pipeline issue like a lot of the professions, and we think these changes, among others, we're doing is aimed towards going in that direction and helping that.
I like it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Board of Medical Licensure, 201 KAR 9067 with staff suggested amendment.
This regulation establishes the qualifications, continuing education requirements, sanctions, and professional standards for physicians authorized to practice as medicinal cannabis practitioners. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to add clarifying language, make technical changes, and comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Leanne Diakoff, General Counsel with the Kentucky Board of Medical Licensure.
Good afternoon, Jeff Prather, General Counsel of the Kentucky Board of Nursing.
Thank you all for coming today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. Yates. Senator? No. Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Board of Nursing, 201 KAR 20057, 20065, 067, 215, 225, and 700. All except 65 and 700 have staff suggested amendments.
201 KR 2057 amends to update definitions, establish new criteria for the Kappa CS practice requirements for APRNs, require an exemption process for the Kappa CS as required by Senate Bill 94 from the 2023 regular session, and update material incorporated by reference. The amended after comments version amends to authorize the APRN and collaborating physician during the term of the Kappa CS to meet by phone or if in person or video conferencing is not feasible, and amends to provide a 30-day grace period for a Kappa CS that ends unexpectedly for reasons outside the APRN's control. 201 KR 2065 amends to add a requirement for a prescription drug monitoring program, change training to 8-hour continuing education, update language related to DEA registration requirements, and update drug screening standards before treatment. 201 KR 2067 establishes pursuant to Senate Bill 47 from the 23 regular session professional standards for an APRN practicing as a medical cannabis practitioner, including definitions, new $100 fees for an application for authorization and renewal to recommend medical cannabis, and the authorization form incorporated by reference. The amended after comments version amends to require an APRN to recommend rather than require a pregnancy test for female patients of childbearing age, and amends for consistency with statute by clarifying that if the patient has been previously diagnosed with a qualifying medical condition by another healthcare provider, the APRN may confirm diagnosis. 201 KR 2215 amends to permit the board to accept a 6-month evaluation from an employer for satisfactory employment documentation, updates language relating to new criteria for the Kappa CS, include alternative methods for meeting the earning requirement and clinical use of drugs, update DEA registration requirements, remove implicit bias training from continuing education requirements, and update material incorporated by reference. 201 KR 2225 amends to correct statutory citations and delete references to delinquent student loans. The staff amendments for 201 KR 20057, 67, 215, 225 all make changes for clarity and to comply with KRS Chapter 13A. Additionally, 20067 amends Section 6 to require continuing education subject areas include indications of cannabis use disorder, amends Section 8 to correct a citation, and amends Section 10 to incorporate by reference the renewal application. 201 KR 2700 establishes pursuant to Senate Bill 110 the medication aid credentialing requirements, training program standards, an initial approval fee of $200 for a CMA training program and a $300 fee for a CMA 1 and 2 training program, a recertification fee of $25 for a CMA 1 or 2, and incorporates by reference training program forms. The amended after comments version expands the training program definition to include management companies by adding third-party vendor. Amendments were made at the January 8th meeting to amend various sections of 201 KR 2700 to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Thank you all for coming. Welcome back again. Please identify yourself for the record, please.
Kelly Jenkins, Executive Director, Kentucky Board of Nursing.
Good afternoon again. Jeff Prather, General Counsel, Board of Nursing.
Thank you all. There are staff amendments. Can I get a motion for approval of staff amendments? Motion. Second? Second. That'll work. Without objection, so ordered. Representative Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just got a question on, let's see, which one is that? The 2700. I believe that was deferred from October, and there were some concerns in the industry about the funding for that and everything, and you said you'd be working on it. Could you give us an update, or has anything changed or anything?
Okay. Yes, I can give you an update. I think industries or stakeholders' concerns have to do with the requirement under the CHFS regs and DCBS, and I think they were exploring funding options to assist with that. We also understand that a House Bill 493 has been filed to possibly address some of the statutory requirements for the CMAs. However, our regulation doesn't create the requirement. It simply creates the ability for these programs or for these facilities to have a CMA program to train folks that can meet the requirement.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members have any questions or comments? I'll just have one on KAR 020065 on dealing with monoproduct buprenorphine products. On there, you are adding a requirement for a prescription drug monitoring program. What is?
What we're doing is previously, I believe it was just Casper, and throughout our regs it referenced Casper.
Okay.
What we've done is made it more generic, because in a few years we don't know if Casper will be that monitoring program. So
Sure.
we're just saying that they have to be whatever prescription monitoring program is in use in Kentucky. That's the one that they have to have an account with.
Makes sense. Any other questions? Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet, Department of Fish and Wildlife. 301 KAR 4021, 301 KAR 5001, 10, 20, and 200. All of the 301 Chapter 5 regulations have staff suggested amendments.
301 KAR 4021 repeals 301 KAR 4020 and 4050 because the requirements of those administrative regulations have been incorporated into 301 KAR 222. 301 KAR 5001 is being amended to update definitions. 5010 is being amended to update material incorporated by reference. 5020 is being amended to update agent fees to include statutorily permissible fees and remove statutory conflicts. 5200 is being amended to add black bear as a species for which permits will be eligible, clarify the benefits of receiving a waterfowl permit, move the application and reporting processes to an online submission portal, and remove unnecessary language. The staff suggested amendments to these regulations amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A and make technical changes.
Thank you for coming today. Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Stephen Fields, staff attorney for the department.
Where's Jenny?
They had other legislative commitments, so we kind of had to do a zone defense.
I get it. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of staff amendments?
Motion.
Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Any members of the subcommittee have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
General Government Cabinet, Department of Agriculture, 302 KAR 2010 and 16150, both with staff suggested amendments.
302-2010 establishes the Department of Agriculture's open records process and related policies. 302-16150 establishes requirements for amusement safety inspectors. The staff suggested amendments amend various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Heather Becker, General Counsel for the...
We could turn your mic on. There you go.
Heather Becker, General Counsel for the Kentucky Department of Agriculture.
Clay Quarles, counsel for the department.
Thank you all for coming today. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments?
Motion. Second.
Without objection, so ordered. Any members of the subcommittee have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Public Protection Cabinet, Horse Racing Commission, 810 KAR 4070 with staff suggested amendment.
This administrative regulation replaces the previous jockey fee schedule for thoroughbred racing with a new schedule divided into three per. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with 13A drafting requirements.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Yes, thank you. Jamie Eads, Executive Director for the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission.
Jennifer Woolsing, KHRC General Counsel.
Thank you all for coming. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval? Staff amendment.
Motion.
Without objection, so ordered. We do have a couple people signed up to speak on this, one being our own Senator Damon Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would defer first to our guest from the Jockeys Guild, and then I'll speak after that.
Absolutely. So it looks like we have Mindy Coleman here. Thank you for coming, Ms. Coleman. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon.
Is your mic on?
It is now. Good afternoon, Mindy Coleman on behalf of the Jockeys Guild. We just would like to make a comment and recognize Senator Damon Thayer, as well as all the people who were instrumental in getting this amendment made, including the chairman of the Kentucky Racing Commission, as well as Commission member Charlie O'Connor, as staff, Jamie Eads and Jennifer Woolley, as well as the Horsemen's organizations. We had the members of the KTA, Chauncey Morris, as well as the board members of the Kentucky HBPA, Rick Hiles, Dale Roman, and Buff Bradley. So we did want to take this opportunity to express our appreciation. This is something that took a long time and a lot of people coming together to work to get this amendment made. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really happy to see this reg before us today. I've been working for over 2 years to try to get the pay scale for jockeys who ride races in Kentucky commensurate with our increased purses. Of course, when jockeys finish 1, 2, 3 in races in Kentucky, they receive a percentage of the purse, but generally just get a flat losing jock mount fee for finishing fourth or further back. After we passed Senate Bill 120 in 2020 and HHR went into full statutory approval and our purses skyrocketed, the losing jock mount fee at Churchill Downs, Keeneland, and Kentucky Downs, the 3 tracks with the biggest purses, was immediately agreed to an increase by the Horsemen's Group. But it took a while to convince them to do that at Turfway Park and Ellis Park in northern and western Kentucky, respectively. I'm not a believer in government setting pay scale for anything. I think my record here after 21 plus years would indicate that. So I just continued to jawbone the horsemen to agree to an increase. And I would like everyone to know that the Racing Commission, the racetracks, and the Kentucky Thoroughbred Association were in agreement, but it required the Kentucky HBPA to come along. And once they came to an agreement, then it requires the Racing Commission to put it into the Kentucky revised administrative regs. So there was an agreement finally reached last fall, and we knew that it would take a while to get it through the regs process. So Churchill Downs, the owner of Turfway Park, agreed to increase the mount fee when the Turfway Park meet began in December. So really a win-win all around. Jockeys are the only athlete that risks their lives when they go out and ride a racehorse around an oval track 40 miles an hour. It's a very dangerous sport. We've got over 50 jockeys now that are receiving supplementary health coverage through the Permanently Disabled Jockeys Fund. That's an industry-funded fund, and I think it's important that these men and women, these athletes who pound for pound I'd put up against any athlete in the world, it's important that they be paid commensurate with the risk and skill involved in their sport. So thank you for indulging, Mr. Chairman. This is a very good day and puts our pay scale for jockeys on par with most other major racing states in the country.
Thank you, Senator, and not only for this, but all you do for this industry. Thank you. Any other members have any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Office of Inspector General, 900 KAR 5020 and 6075. There are amendments for both of these regulations.
900 KAR 5020, as amended after comments, amends to change the maximum number of beds that may be converted, to reinstate the criteria for megavoltage radiation equipment, PET equipment, and MRIs, to adjust the review criteria for intermediate care facilities, and to reinstate the existing criteria for ophthalmological ambulatory surgical centers. The agency amendment for 5020 amends Section 2 in the state health plan to update the addition date, to amend Level 2 psychiatric residential treatment facility provisions, to delete documentation and inventory requirements, to delete the requirement that the number of beds requested for each specialized program be calculated using an annual average occupancy rate, to delete the requirement that certain applicants are given priority, and establish instead that the application shall be subject to non-substantive amends home health agency provisions to remove the requirement that an application by a licensed Kentucky acute care hospital, critical access hospital, or nursing facility proposing to establish a home health service under specified circumstances shall be subject to non-substantive review, and establish instead that it shall be consistent with the state health plan under certain specified circumstances. It inserts a requirement that an application by a licensed Kentucky acute care hospital, critical access hospital, or nursing facility proposing to expand a home health service shall be subject to non-substantive review if no existing licensed home health agency is available and willing. The facility documents its efforts to find a home health agency, and the license issued specifies its limitations. It amends the cardiac catheterization service provisions to provide applicants an alternative of using other verifiable data under specified circumstances. It amends the ambulatory surgical center provisions to update and replace requirements for ownership, training, facility location, number of centers, accreditation requirements, and compliance with federal kickback and fee splitting laws, and complies with 13A drafting requirements. 900 KAR 6075 amends to grant non-substantive review status to the following types of CON applications: to convert existing acute care beds to psychiatric beds for adult patients under certain circumstances, to provide emission tomography or magnetic resonance imaging services, and to establish or expand home health services. The amended after comments version amends to change the maximum number of beds that may be converted, to delete the proposal to grant non-substantive review to applications to provide megavoltage radiation therapy and emission therapy. The agency amendment amends Section 1 to add a definition for psychiatric residential treatment facility, and amends Section 2 to specify that Level 2 PRTFs shall be subject to the non-substantive review process. There is additionally a proposed amendment for the regulation as amended by an agency amendment, which would amend Section 2.3i to remove an application proposing to establish a home health service from non-substantive review, and to mirror the language from the State Health Plan for Facilities and Services and 900 KAR 5020 regarding an application to expand a home health service.
Thank you. That was long. All right. Would you please introduce yourselves for the record?
Yes. David Lovely, Acting Deputy Inspector General.
Valerie Moore, Policy Specialist, Office of Inspector General.
Thank you. Thank you. There are amendments, but we're going to hold off on those just yet. There are several. This being the state health plan, it is very comprehensive. There are several signed up to speak, some against, some maybe for, with compromise, not sure. But if it's all right with you all, if you want to leave the table for a second, Joyce, do you have a group that would like to come speak? And just make sure those green lights are on, the microphone's in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Christy Shannon, General Counsel for Professional Home Healthcare Agency. We wanted to show up personally today to thank this committee. Many of you took time out of your very busy schedules, met with me and my colleague one-on-one. We certainly didn't get everything we asked for, but the collaboration is not lost on us. We wanted to really thank this committee and the cabinet, who also met with us as well.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Carroll. I'm a registered nurse. I am the administrator with Professional Home Health Care. I also want to thank the members for everything that you guys have done to support home health care services throughout the state.
My name is Joyce Lewis, and I want to thank each and every one of you for listening, and I call them my stormtroopers when they come storming to your doors. I thank you for opening them. I thank Marie Cole and the Kentucky Home Care Association for being a voice for us. I thank the cabinet. I never thought I'd say this, even though I used to work there, for the compromise that was made. And while we're not crazy about the language, we can live with the language.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Marie, Evan, do you all have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Evan Reinhardt with the Kentucky Home Care Association.
Maria Leja Cole, attorney here in town. I work with the Home Care Association.
We just like to echo the comments from professional that we appreciate the engagement from the committee. We appreciate the engagement from the Office of Inspector General, Mr. Chairman in particular. We know you dedicated a lot of time to this, so we're very, very thankful to have that chance to have a dialogue, and we look forward to more of the same in the future.
Thank you all. I know we've been working on this, Marie, about 5 months or so. I thank David too, and again, I appreciate all the compromise on the home health part, and I think if everybody comes away unhappy, it was probably a good compromise. And then Joyce, of course, all you and the stormtroopers, Jimmy, appreciate all you all. There is another person that is here to speak against. Is there anybody else that on the home health provision that wanted to speak? Yes.
I just have one question. So in the litany of changes to the health plan, was what we agreed on in ink this morning included in that, or does that need to be called separately?
There are other amendments that we'll have to adopt. I just wanted to let everybody speak first before we adopted anything that we might have to otherwise come back to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we do have a Ryan Smith, MD, here to speak about another provision of the state health plan. Please identify yourself for the records and please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Ryan Smith. Hello, good afternoon, Chair West, Chair Lewis, and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak on my concerns about the language in the Cabinet's amendment being offered for consideration today about the ownership in ASCs. I'm Ryan Smith. I'm born and raised here in Kentucky. I'm currently practicing as a physician in Lexington, Kentucky. My specialty is cataract and glaucoma surgery, and I serve patients from across the central and eastern parts of the state. I have patients as far as Ashland, Pikeville, Harlan, Somerset, Frankfort, and Lexington who come and see me. I have significant concerns about today's Cabinet Amendment, the 006075, regarding CON exceptions for optometry ownership in an ASC. Certificate of need is a complex issue. It's an integral part of Kentucky's healthcare. The current model protects rural hospitals, as the revenue that is generated helps keep the hospital open to serve all Kentuckians. Once a CON exception is made, expect every specialty to start requesting exemptions. Any significant CON exemption should be made based on the recommendations of the legislature's CON task force after a transparent process of discussion. My understanding is that this task force is actively working and has been working for almost a year to investigate the effects of possible CON changes in Kentucky law. When this amended regulation was originally filed last spring, similar language was included to allow optometrists and ophthalmologists co-owned practices to bypass the CON process. The Kentucky Eye physicians and surgeons participated in a call with the Office of Inspector General and optometry leaders to discuss our concerns, and we followed up with a public comment letter. As a result of public comment concerns raised not only by our organization but several rural hospitals, the statement of consideration filed by this committee in July shows the proposed change was removed. We were surprised to be informed less than a month ago by the Cabinet that not only was the CON exemption being reinserted through today's Cabinet amendment, but the new language is actually much more problematic than what was originally proposed. In fact, language was again changed in an email dated February 8th, 4 days ago. We expressed our continued concerns to the Cabinet, and I would like to highlight a few of our biggest concerns for you. In the amendment, the language says, a legal entity that is 100% owned by physicians and optometrists. This implies that if you are an entity 100% owned by ophthalmologists, you cannot get the same CON bypass just because you do not share ownership with optometrists. It uses the plural form of optometrists. Does that mean you must co-own with multiple optometrists? Why should we have to go into business with optometrists to get the CON when we only perform surgeries that a licensed ophthalmologist can perform? This is discriminatory. Maybe it's not the Cabinet's intention, but that's what the language said, and words matter. The language also mandates that owners of the facility include both a residency-trained retina specialist and a residency-trained cornea specialist. This language does not specify if the specialist is an MD or an OD, a medical doctor or an optometrist. Factually, this is incorrect, as during residency, ophthalmologists receive both retina and cornea training. Then we undergo, that is during residency. Afterwards, then we can choose to undergo additional years of specialization. This is called a fellowship. This specific language discriminates against at least 5 ophthalmology fellowship specialists in addition to all residency-trained comprehensive ophthalmologists. We asked the State Inspector General why these 2 subspecialties were being mandated when not all surgeries performed today in a hospital or an ASC require the services of a retina and cornea specialist. Other fellowships such as plastics, glaucoma, pediatrics, those were all excluded. But we have not gotten an answer from the Cabinet. Only a minority of ophthalmic surgeries require the services of these 2 specialty types. Mandating preferential treatment for 2 subspecialists over other ophthalmology subspecialists is unnecessary and, again, discriminatory. The language also states that the entity is 100% owned by physicians. That appears to allow any physician, not just ophthalmologists, to be owners of this ASC. Does that mean a family practice or an orthopedic physician can co-own in this ASC? The way it's written, I believe it would. The language requires the ASC to be in a county where at least one of its owners has a private office, but doesn't say the physician has to be qualified to provide postoperative care if the patient has complications. New language was added in this amendment to try to address the concerns raised about violations of anti-kickback and Stark laws. It states the applicant must certify they will comply with these laws. Compliance is not possible. It is evidenced by 2 multi-million-dollar settlements paid by optometrist-ophthalmologist referral relationships in Texas and Tennessee. It is also evidenced by the words in a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General opinion issued when optometrists in a group practice attempted to buy into an ophthalmology ASC. The federal OIG's opinion concluded the risk of fraud and abuse is not small by stating, quote, the likelihood that they, optometrists, are using their investment in the surgical center simply as a vehicle for receiving remuneration for referrals of patients to the ophthalmologist increases significantly. There are no safeguards to obviate the risk that their investment in the surgical center is for the purpose of inducing or rewarding referrals. Accordingly, we cannot conclude that the proposed arrangement poses a minimal risk of fraud and abuse. Lastly, I'd like to discuss the financial implications this regulation change will present to the taxpayers of Kentucky. Not a single optometry expanded scope procedure necessitates being performed in a surgical center. I currently perform 100% of these same procedures in my office. It is safer, it is easier, and it is cheaper for my patients, even though I have the option of going to a surgery center. By doing this, I am billing 1 procedure code for the office, rather than going to a surgery center and billing 1 procedure code for myself and 1 procedure code for the facility. Going to the surgery center costs Medicare, Medicaid, the patient, and taxpayers of Kentucky more money. By allowing these procedures to be moved from an office setting to a surgery center by optometry, you are inducing procedures to be moved to an ASC at significant cost to the taxpayers of Kentucky. Each procedure moved from the office to a surgery center will more than double the cost to the taxpayers. Co-management is the current business relationship in optometry ophthalmology where an optometrist refers a cataract surgery patient to an ophthalmologist. After surgery, the patient will return to the optometrist, and in return, the optometrist will receive 20% of the surgical fee. Obviously, this encourages future referrals. Now imagine that this relationship is further entangled in surgical center ownership. The optometrist will send the cataract surgery patient to the ophthalmologist that co-owns the center with him. The optometrist will then get 20% of the surgical fee plus the additional ownership fee from the facility. That's quite the reward. For the numerous reasons outlined above, we urge you to ask the Cabinet to remove and strike this language from the amendment. This is not a trivial change, and we believe this opens the state health plan to litigation based on discriminatory language. We also think that this raises costs for Kentuckians, jeopardizes care for patients, jeopardizes the fiscal health of rural hospitals, and create what could be a complete workaround of the current CON requirements for any physician type, as long as the ASC has an optometrist, a retinal specialist, and a corneal specialist as co-owners. The Academy of Eye Physicians and Surgeons supports increased care and access for rural Kentuckians, but believes any changes to the CON process should be addressed through the legislature's CON task force and not slid in at the last minute on February 8th into a regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. If you don't care to scoot over 1 seat, and then Inspector General and Valerie, if you'd like to come back up to the table to address those concerns, and we'll open it up for questions or comments from members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with the changes here to the state health plan regarding the optometry language, it is really an access issue that we're trying to address, a need for these urgent care, urgent beds and the reason that we have the retinal specialty and the corneal specialty is because it's a very targeted to these urgent processes, these urgent procedures that need to be done. We had some feedback where I think it was in Lexington even, so also a metropolitan area where operating beds were being reduced at St. Joseph's to certain days a week. Again, we just see this as a need to address these beds in rural areas and even in some of our larger metropolitan areas. Here, and I certainly want you to weigh in, Ryan, not trying to cut you off. But so when you use discrimination, though, I think what we're seeing, what we have here is a limited carve-out. It's not a discrimination. It's not trying to favor a certain party or licensed specialty over another. It is a limited carve-out because we're trying to address a very targeted need that the cabinet has perceived. And what we also have is what I don't think, and I understand what you're saying, but I don't think here it does have in the list in the amendment where an ophthalmologist, Kentucky licensed ophthalmologist, or an ophthalmology group 100% owned, or an ophthalmologist-optometrist group. So it's not limited to just an ophthalmologist-optometrist group as Dr. Smith, alluded to in his description. As far as the last-minute aspect, my apologies to Dr. Smith as far as that goes. We had a lot of turnover in the Inspector General's office, and I think any lack of communication was certainly unintentional. We did reach out to Dr. Mackey, who's the president of the association, on January 19th, had a call with him. The primary concern that was expressed to us was the Stark Law concerns, which while we understand the Stark Law concerns, our position is simply that the state health plan doesn't override the Stark Law. Federal law is going to supersede the state health plan. But in an attempt to try to assuage any concerns, we added subsection F, which requires attesting to the fact that you're going to stick within the guidelines or within the law, the federal law. And that we thought would have addressed Dr. Mackey's concerns. Then the association brought more concerns to us in a formal letter. And again, apologies for the miscommunication there, but the addition of the corneal specialist and the retinal specialist was, in our opinion, actually tailored it even more, and we did not anticipate concerns as far as that goes. And I think, Dr. Smith, and I'll let you, if you would like to speak again, I think you were trying to get in there. I think I've addressed all of your points, but if you'd like me to address any more, please feel free.
Dr. Smith, or would you like me to open up for questions or comments from members?
I'll have a couple of responses here real fast. I would like for you to please define, because words matter, especially when they're being written into the law here. What is a residency retina specialist? What is a residency cornea specialist? What is a surgically credentialed optometrist? I want to make sure we're all on the same page here.
A residency trained corneal specialist is a specialist that's trained to operate on corneas. A residency trained retinal specialist, again, residency trained to perform procedures on retina.
The last part, surgically credentialed optometrist.
I don't know that you have a credential to perform surgeries as an optometrist. There's certainly, my understanding is there's 2 limited exceptions that they can perform laser surgeries for.
Okay.
Did you write this?
This
This
is not a
circular definition.
Sir, this is not a cross-examination. Any members have questions?
I would like to also discuss the surgery center aspect here. There's 4 surgical centers in the city of Lexington, in Fayette County. There are approximately 9 to 10 surgery centers within 50 miles of Fayette County that are surgery centers, plus the university. I'm curious about the access problem that you feel like we have in Central Kentucky.
But I did address that. Just I hope maybe I wasn't clear, but we had received communication from a doctor at St. Joe's that said that they were reducing the number of beds. I believe it was in 2022 that we received that letter.
Okay.
I believe my co-chair, Senator West, has questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions for the cabinet. So it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me this would be a significant impact on CON. Is that the cabinet's opinion? Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, I certainly understand that position, Senator West. Given the strong opinions that it's elicited, I don't think that it was intentional for it to be a major impact. I truly look at it again as the words that Dr. Smith used were discrimination, but I view it as a very small exception. You have to have these specialties to then qualify for this ASC exception.
And I think that's part of the controversy is like the cabinet views it as a small intrusion into CON, and they would disagree with that probably, that's a huge intrusion. But and hopefully members of this committee will chime in. I think, as you know, we have a lot of discussion about CON up here, and I have my opinions on it, and I won't go into those here, but we have a task force on CON, and so I think the general feeling of the legislature, and like I said, feel free to chime in, any members of the committee, is that maybe that's something that we should be addressing and looking at, and if changed, maybe should be through statute. So I'll just start there. Second question is why were all the amendments grouped together in one gob? I know that's a highly complex legal term, but one group rather than cut out separate so we could address them separately. It's harder for us to deal with those in the committee. In other words, if we go against one thing, we have to go against it all, and we basically have to shoot down the state health plan, and we don't want to do that. Why was it set up that way, I guess?
Sure. So I can't speak, I guess, to anything but currently what is here, and I think it was a culmination of just several deferrals and us just adding the agency amendments, and I think that it maybe was one of the reasons that it's all together. To answer your question, Senator.
Okay.
May I ask a question? I just have a follow-up from something earlier.
Let me ask one more question. It's going to be to you, actually, and then it'll be up to the chair to decide that.
Thank you.
You mentioned in your testimony, correct me if I'm wrong, I may have missed it, but I thought you said compliance was not possible. Did you state that? If you could go into that a little bit real quick.
Yes. I mean, that's the finding from the Federal Office of Inspector General, that a optometry co-owned surgery center is not possible, that there would be significant issues with fraud. I can pull up some quotes here from the finding. We conclude that the proposed arrangement could potentially generate prohibited remuneration under the anti-kickback statute, and that the OIG could potentially impose administrative sanctions on the requesters under section blah, 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 in connection with the proposed amendment. Any definitive conclusion regarding the existence of the anti-kickback violation is on the party's intent. They're in distinctly different positions. The ophthalmologist performed the surgical centers and is effectively an extension of the office practices. It's not a comparable extension for the optometrist. As a result, the likelihood that they are using their investment in the surgical center simply as a vehicle for receiving remuneration for referrals of patients to the ophthalmologist increases significantly. There are no safeguards to obviate the risk that their investment in the surgical center is for the purpose of inducing or rewarding referrals.
Thank you. I've got one final question for the cabinet. My understanding is you guys were asked to pull out this part specifically to maybe be addressed through a committee amendment, and you guys refused to do that. Is that, just for the record, is that kind of what happened?
Yes, Senator West, I think. If I'm understanding your question, yes, that's correct.
Gotcha. That's my final question. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Do any other members have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you both. We do have one, both groups, I appreciate your testimony. We do have one other person signed up to speak against it's Protection Advocacy, Ms. Heidi Schussler?
That's good enough. Yes,
good enough? All right.
You got it.
Lanham, but thank you all for both coming up to the table today.
And luckily the light is still on, it sounds like. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Heidi Schussler-Lanham. I'm the legal director at Kentucky Protection and Advocacy. We are an independent state agency that provides legally based advocacy for persons with disabilities throughout the state. We often review legislation as well as regulation, and we're talking today about this regulation 900 KAR 5020, and specifically about the part that addresses intermediate care facilities for individuals with intellectual disabilities, or ICF's IID. Last session in 2023, the legislature enacted a statute, KRS 216B178, that specifies that in order for an ICF IID to add beds and be consistent with the state health plan, it provided 4 specific criteria. When the state health plan was amended, those criteria were not added to the state health plan. We believe that they need to be added to the state health plan because when a hearing officer goes to review any application for new or moving beds from one of the public ICFs to a private ICF, they're going to need to make sure that that application is consistent with the state health plan. And we have a statute that says this is what would make it consistent with the state health plan, but yet we aren't putting that criteria into the state health plan.
Thank you. And again, we'll do the same thing. If you want to shift over one seat, and Inspector General and Valerie, if you all would like to come back up. Okay. Mike is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you. I actually spoke with Ms. Lanham prior to this. So the statute that was passed last year says that with these 4 criteria, and I'm paraphrasing, with these 4 criteria, it shall be compliant with the state health plan. So when Ms. Lanham presented this to us, we had already gone. I think it was after this had been filed, and the statute supersedes the state health plan. So the statute, whatever those 4 criteria, if they're met, it's compliant with the state health plan, no matter what we put into the state health plan. And the cabinet just didn't think that another amendment to change the language in the state health plan and adding that to, as Senator West alluded to, sort of already a longer list of amendments already was the route we wanted to take.
To that I would add that The statute became effective.
Is that mic on in front of you?
No, it isn't.
Thank you.
To that, I would add the statute became effective June 29th. We've been writing to the Office of the Inspector General since August regarding this. They've been able to make other changes